Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the program. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. Well, as you know, Kriss Hosein is with us. He has been very vocal this morning about his thoughts on what is taking place. But also joining us in studio, we have former UNC senator and also political activist, Ms. Marsha Walker. Hello, welcome back to AM Prime. It's been a while.
Well, this is the first time I'm in studio.
It is the first time in studio.
Post-COVID generation.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning, and also joining us virtually is political activist Mr. Ravi Balgobin Maharaj. Good morning, sir, and welcome to AM Prime.
Hi, good morning to you. Good morning to all your viewers this morning as well.
Well, thanks so much for joining us this morning. A packed house indeed. Let's get straight into the conversation. This morning, Kriss Hosein and I were speaking about the latest coming out from the United National Congress, from the press conference last week by Mr. Dinesh Rambali, and what's taking place in terms of responses. Mr. Rambali was due to join us actually sometime this week on AM Prime, but I believe that he's been quite busy. That being said, Mr. Balgobin Maharaj, I read your latest contribution to the press through your letter, letter to the editor. Questions for Ingrate Dinesh, and in reading it, you've referred to traitors within the United National Congress. I believe you even referred to Mr. Rambali as a traitor. Why, in your opinion, is Mr. Rambali a traitor?
Well, I mean, as I said in the letter, Mr. Rambali would have joined the UNC as a member of parliament in 2020. Maybe he was a supporter before then, I'm not sure. But officially, he became a member of parliament in 2020. And in his press conference, the issues that he was raising, the issues that he had brought up in defense of his actions and his statements, was that Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC had made some egregious errors in their time as government of Trinidad and Tobago. That was the period between 2010 and 2015, and he raised a few of the issues that he had a problem with. The thing about it is that if he had a problem with these things, and knowing these things that would have cost the UNC the election in 2015, then he needs to answer as to why would he join the UNC in 2020, 5 years later, and with Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar still in the position of political leader. Now, he's saying 4 years after that, that he thinks that Mrs. Persad-Bissessar is no longer fit to lead the party, that she will not win the next general elections and things like that. But did he think she was going to win the election in 2020 with all of these issues hanging over her head then? And if he thought that in 2020, what changed his mind? Now, there are those that will say, well, maybe the defeat in 2020 showed them that she does not have the ability to win an election. But you have to remember that there are very mitigating circumstances with the 2020 election, not least of which is the COVID pandemic, which made a lot of people feel unsafe and unwilling to come out to the polls. But still, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar was able to capture 2 extra seats that they didn't have going into the election. And since then, she has been making gains, not only in terms of votes, as she just recently won the popular voting local government election, but in also capturing new districts in that election as well. So I think the momentum is with the party, and everything that Mr. Rambali has said, again, were issues that were dated back prior to 2015 and prior to his selection as an MP. So really and truly, he needs to answer as to why these issues are only now being raised, why he joined the party knowing that these issues existed, and why he is decided to speak out just moments before a national election is called, when the momentum is with the UNC for victory.
Well, Mr. Balgobin Maharaj, I mean, I do get the points that you raise. It's fair points in the sense that, okay, if Dinesh Rambali thought these were issues, why did he go ahead with his campaign? But that does not necessarily answer the question as to whether or not he's a traitor. I mean, surely it questions his integrity and possibly even his principles. But if it is that now he is coming out Why does it make him a traitor? I'm still a bit confused. I understand the questions about principles and integrity, but traitor to whom? Traitor to what?
Well, he's a traitor to the UNC on a whole, and not necessarily Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar, but he is a traitor to all of the voting members who have consistently, and this is dating back to 2010, Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar did not install herself as political leader of the party. Neither did the national executive decide to take up those offices one day. They were put there and they were elected to those offices by the members of the United National Congress. Now, he's stating that he has a mandate by his constituents and the people who voted for him that he needs to speak out and he needs to, make these issues known. He spoke about swearing on the Bhagavad Gita. But there's also an oath to the United National Congress. And within the National Congress, there is a constitution, and the constitution states that these types of issues are things that can be dealt with internally, and there are provisions for it to be dealt with internally. So for him to be coming on a public platform and making these issues known when there's no indication that he attempted to deal with these things internally, and when he is basically saying that he invalidates every single internal election that took place between 2010 and 2022, which I believe was the last one, when the United National Congress and their members gave Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar the mandate to lead their party and their confidence and trust, he is invalidating all of that and saying, no, I, Dinesh Rambali, do not agree with her leadership, and I, Dinesh Rambali, do not agree with the members who have sort of put it there. Yeah, that is being a traitor to the entire United National Congress.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if you'll have anything to add.
In here. I will start bottom and go up, his last point, in terms of MP Rambali invalidating the various elections, internal elections. But we as an opposition, in particular Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, stand on platforms Monday after Monday and state that the Keith Rowley-led administration is a minority government. She constantly calls for him to get a fresh mandate. When he gets a fresh mandate and he beats her at the polls, she says, well, we have the popular vote. And there's always something to say, well, you're not really the leader of the country. The people don't really want you. So how is that any different? How is it? You know why? Because there's on the ground. Yes, okay, great. We have polls and whatnot and whatnot and whatnot. Okay, great, fine. But Kamala Prasad-Bissessar won with some 8,000 votes out of 130,000+ members. Similarly to Keith Rowley, 14,000 in Diego Martin West, as opposed to 29,000 votes available. 300,000 votes as opposed to 800, 900,000 is the electorate, right? So you're right. He is a minority leader. So is Kamala Prasad-Bissessar. So any argument that is thrown out, we can throw it right back. And there's a level of hypocrisy. Ravi spoke about the Constitution. I'm so happy that he spoke about the Constitution. Women's army election, overdue. Youth army election, overdue. Every single 41 constituency executive elections, overdue. When last have constituency executives met? When last have we had a National Assembly? When last have we had a Congress? I can take the Constitution line by line by line by line by line, and I will demonstrate each line. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar has broken the United National Congress's Constitution. So who's the traitor? Who's the traitor when we can totally disregard our Constitution? I'm not Hindu, but to say but when MP Rambali talks about, taking an oath and for him it being spiritual, for us to even put, but there's UNC and but you've, MP Rambali spoke about that. We have to understand these are not equals. It's not equal. So to say, well, I understand that you have a spiritual oath, but You know, and people often say, well, you know, UNC, party before country. There's a rank. There's a rank and file. And the truth is, UNC falls quite low when you go with God, country, party. It's not party first. So for you to say, you know, well, it's a spiritual oath, and then you talk about MP Ramble, you talk about a spiritual oath, but there's no but. He has a duty to go with his spiritual beliefs before party, right? Let me open my phone because I took notes, what he was saying. So that's the mandate, provisions to deal with things internally. I can show you, and I am certain, I dare every MP, and silence is complicit. So you see, all these MPs that stay quiet, I've often spoken about Brian Manning being a traitor, Amy Brown being a traitor, Penelope Beckles being a traitor. Because the issue is, who are you being a traitor to? Your party, your political leader, or your country? Or the oath that you said you were going to serve with integrity. So at some point, these MPs, I was looking for those MPs on the government bench to speak up and say enough is enough. You don't want to come UNC, you could become an independent, you could do something, but you need to speak up and say, Keith Rowley, enough is enough. We just had 11, and the death rate for the babies with the infection in the Port of Spain General Hospital. And these MPs are silent. I would hope that that's the difference between the UNC and the PNM, that our MPs are individuals before anything else, country before anything else, our individual morals, our moral compass, our integrity before anything else. So I'm happy that we have MPs that are willing to stand up and say enough is enough. We can't sit here and toe the line, because that's what we're seeing on PNM side. That's cult behavior, and nobody wants to trade one cult for another cult. That's the bottom line.
Mr. Balgobin Maharaj, Ms. Walker has expressed her thoughts and opinions as to what is taking place internally, and also in reflection of what you would have mentioned. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to speak of in response.
Well, yes, because, you know, Marsha has made some interesting points, and it kind of speaks to her philosophy, and I think maybe this philosophy of Dinesh Rambali as well. Because the thing about it, no member of parliament sitting in the current parliament won their seats as an independent MP. All of them contested their seats as members of a political party, whether it be UNC or PNM. And to say that they can be independent after winning an election when campaigning on a political platform and having taken part in the development of a manifesto of that political party speaks again to the hypocrisy and the traitor behavior that I was speaking about. Because you can't say one thing in an election campaign and say, look, this manifesto is what we believe in and this is what we want to implement. Or this is our leader who we are putting forward as Prime Minister. We stand behind her and we think that she's the best person to lead the party in an election campaign. And then when, after the election campaign is concluded, you say, no, we don't support her anymore, we don't. I mean, that is really traitor behavior. And I can't believe that Marsha would admit that on national television. The second issue is...
So you're okay with people like Amy Brown and...
One second, please.
Oh,
One second, please. Let me finish my piece.
Yeah.
When she speaks about the popular vote and saying that, oh, there are minority leaders, that is true. Not the entire population votes. But then the same can be said about Dinesh Rambali in Chaguanas West, and the same can be said about every MP sitting in Parliament today. That is the system that we have. Democracy is the choice to vote if you feel like voting. And those who exercise their right and their choice are the ones who decide who will lead them. And in the UNC, there is a choice amongst all the financial members of the party if you want to come out and vote. And consistently since 2010, those members who have chosen to vote have selected Kamala Persad-Bissessar. If the other members do not feel that she is suitable or qualified to lead, they can voice their opinion by coming out to vote against her. But they have not done it. And that is because Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar has the mandate of the party, whether they vote or not, to lead them into an election. And anyone who feels that they are better suited or better qualified for the position are free and entitled to come out and challenge her in an internal election, which they've done. And the party then decides whether or not they agree that Mrs. Prasad Bisesha should go. But for Dinesh Rambali to come out and say, I, Dinesh Rambali, think that she should go without a mandate from anyone else, says that he is wanting to come in and lead his party as a dictatorship, and that is something we cannot allow.
Well, I see that
I'll
their
let Kriss
thoughts.
go. I'm seeing
Kriss,
face,
I don't know
so I'll let
if you'd
Kriss
like
go.
to contribute to the conversation.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I would like to contribute, absolutely. So I think what we need to evaluate in this country is that no one is disputing, I don't think anybody is disputing that Mrs. Prasad Bisesha is the current political leader, you know. So I agree with Ravi when he says she has the mandate. No one made an argument against her not having the mandate right now. And I don't think that you need to have a mandate to have a position on a political issue. The way that a political leader is tested is her or his ability to win elections. Mr. Balgobin spoke about her making inroads and building ground. And, well, that is a debate. I don't think that can be a fully for or against. I think it's an ongoing conversation because, in fact, she did pick up an additional seat in San Fernando. That is not untrue. I agree. But when you look at the voter turnout, it would have been 30.34%. And that is not a good voter turnout, even in a local government where you do usually get a low voter turnout. And for her going into a, you know, one of the weakest, your opponent is in one of its weakest positions. You would have gone into this with a coalition, well, an accommodation, same thing. And you still were not able to drum up support to get an additional corporation. And when you look at that seat in Indian Walk Lengua, I mean, when you look at the candidate in 2019, he would have defeated the PNM by some 300 votes. And now it's 1-1, went to the courts, and now we're hearing it's a by-election. So I don't think we can fully say that she has won. But what I want to say, and I also want to comment on this traitor conversation, because he said that that Dinesh Rambali is a traitor. And he said today in this interview that Dinesh Rambali would have betrayed the UNC. And I think we need to be specific. Even if we're going to call him a traitor, who is he betraying? And I think wanting to uphold and support your colleagues, because the colleagues that preceded him in the conversation, because this has been a chronological conversation happening. You had Parry come out. Parry said, NATEX elections is due in June. We must have it. Mrs. Prasad Bisesha said the Friday, yeah, sure. The conversation I thought would have been done there. But then you saw this slew of releases that went out to attack him, basically calling him a traitor. You saw Mrs. Anita Haynes Allen come out and support the position. She said, I support Mrs. Prasad Bisesha, know, but I support the position for elections. I believe it's the UNC that took the PNM to the Privy Council to call the local government elections on time.
It was actually the activists.
Correct.
That's with us today.
Well, hold on. Now, so some may say that, well, the UNC or Mrs. Prasad Bisesha didn't make any arguments about not wanting to defer it. But let us be serious here. Elections, it's a process. And you must initiate the process. And you must show interest in the process. Now, I want to quote Mr. Balgobin. He said in 2017, he said, Kamla does not own the UNC. He said, and I want to quote you, Mr. Balgobin, you said, as she continues to ignore the more rational-minded supporters and members who only want to see their party be victorious once again, one wonders if her claim of PNM inference in the party is correct and who the possible candidates for traitors might be. And I think that's important because even he, at a point in time, agreed that this idea about traitors to Kamla should not exist. Wanting 5 MPs, wanting to uphold the UNC's constitution, I don't see that as anti-Kamla or a traitor to Kamla. I see that as upholding the UNC's constitution. Now, Mr. Rambali stayed silent. He stayed silent for a long time. But when he saw the bullying and the attacks on his colleagues, that is what triggered his response. That's what he said, you know.
I'm curious to know, Mr. Balgobin Maharaj, though, what Kriss just quoted. Do your beliefs that you expressed in 2017 still stand? Are they still the same in 2024?
Absolutely. And I think even Kamala Harris would admit that she doesn't own the party. And again, it goes back to, and both Kriss and Marsha think that they are making points in support of their argument, when really and truly they are really revealing exactly how flawed their arguments are. Kamala Harris and the national executive do not have ownership of the party. Nobody would expect them to. Actually, I'll tell you, the last person to think they own the party got a rude awakening in January of 2010 when he was ousted as political leader of the party. Because there is no one that owns the UNC. When the mandate of the party says, look, it's time for a change, they have changed the leader of the party and they have moved forward. The UNC that exists today is not the same UNC that exists prior to 2010. And I think that knowing that and understanding that, you need to look at exactly what the people who vote for Kamala Harris want from the party. And once as they are satisfied, she will remain as leader. Now, the issue of traitors, and I have to go back to this again because I don't think they are getting it. I have never said that they are traitors to Kamala Harris. I said they are traitors to the UNC. And it is because the people who vote in a general election, the majority of them, I'm sure there are some who vote for the candidate, but the majority of persons vote for a political party. When they voted for Dinesh Rambali to represent them in Chaguanas West, they were voting for the UNC to represent them in Chaguanas West, first and foremost. And when he comes now, and he speaks out against the UNC, and he speaks out against the leader of the UNC, not Kamala Harris, but the leadership of the UNC, he is being a traitor to everyone who voted for the leadership and who voted for him. The same persons that he went to and campaigned on a UNC platform in 2010 and said, yes, we want Kamala Harris to lead this country. We want Kamala Harris to lead this party. When there was an internal election in 2022, he said nothing. He sat quietly when he could have come out and said the same things that he is saying here now, right? But he has been quiet. He has been biding his time for this power grab. And again, it's because they know that UNC is heading towards victory in 2025. The signs are clear. And now they are trying to usurp the leadership, have a coup of the party, simply because they think that if they take over the party now, they will use the same momentum that Kamala Harris has been building to take over the government in 2025. That is what
do you believe that there's a coup? Do you believe that
executive?
I almost want us to go into 2025 general election to lose so that we could say, okay, so now. But
I have no doubt that you want to lose the election.
I just want to ask you one question. Because I know that you take this government to court day in, day out over constitutional issues. I listed several issues where the present leadership have disregarded the UNC Constitution. Do you believe, can you find any justifiable reason for the present leadership to disregard the UNC Constitution in the manner that they have? I've called the Congress, the Assembly, National Executive, the constituency executive elections, the women's arm. Let me go through this women's arm issue. Kamala Harris and her NATEX would have opened up nominations. You would have had to pay, file your nominations. They gave a date. Then they say, no women's arm election. No real reason for it. And still, no women's arm election. Piper behavior, you just wanted my money. If this were the PNM government, I guarantee you, Ravi, you and Anon would be before the Privy Council. Do you believe that elections should be called when elections are due? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question. Because what we are seeing, we have 41 constituency executive elections. That's 41 elections that have not been called when they are due. You have the women's army elections not been called when they are due. The youth army elections not been called. So that's 43 elections. under Kamala Persad-Bissessar and this current NATEX that have not been called. So when you say that we were silent, we were silent, we were silent, you can't jump up in the morning after one issue. That's not how it works. So when you say you were silent, you were silent, you were silent, it is because you were trying. It is because I can show you messages to this NATEX where we ask, we say, you know, the hypocrisy, we're there, and we're behind the scene trying, saying we cannot stand and talk about the government and the constitution and this and that, and every Monday morning we want to talk about the PNM and their disregard for the constitution. We cannot do that if we have no regard for our own constitution. And you continue, you're sidestepping that all the time. You have not addressed the issue of Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the current national executive totally disregarding the UNC constitution.
I just bear in mind that Mr. Balgobin Maharaj has indicated that he just have to leave soon, but
I just want to make one more comment. Mr. Balgobin Maharaj would have spoken about the UNC mandate that Kamala has, and he would have spoken about in every internal election she would have won. But he is saying that today. But in 2017, he would have also said, and I want to quote you, Mr. Ravi, because it's important. We must have consistency in our positions, and you cannot conveniently use an argument for political points. He said, you know, we could talk about Vasa and Christine or anybody else griping over the internal election process of the UNC until we're all blue in our face. But when the political leader, and he's speaking about Kamala, they are trying to unseat, can confirm publicly that she rigged the system in her own favor prior to an election, then really the conversation is over. And so for him to come on this program today and speak to Trinidad and Tobago about democracy within the UNC, and about Kamala having a mandate. And then he said this in 2017. I find that very, very hypocritical.
Well, Mr. Balgobin Maharaj, I know that you do have to depart very shortly, but I'll give you the opportunity to respond to both Ms. Walker and Mr. Hosein. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll take Kriss first. When I said she rigged it, and I agree completely with my statements here. She has developed a party, and I said this in my previous point. The UNC that exists prior to 2010 is not the same party that exists after 2010. When I speak about her rigging a process, what I'm speaking about is the fact that she has developed a UNC, fostered a UNC that remains loyal to her to this day. That is what Kamala Persad-Bissessar has done. And
like
the fact that they don't misconstrue and try to interpret my words when I'm here to explain them to you. Right? When Kamala Persad-Bissessar came into leadership in 2010, she developed a mechanism within the UNC to ensure that the Constitution is adhered to and it forms the basis of the party. And when Marsha says that how all of these things aren't being done, you know what I say to that? Kamala Persad-Bissessar, I mean, and I'm doing it too. I refer to her as the leader. But she cannot do everything on her own. You say you speak to Kamala Persad-Bissessar or you message her. There's an executive in place to handle these issues. There's a general secretary in place to handle these issues. The general secretary is not an elected official. Have you written to him? Have you spoken to him about these issues? What was his response?
No response. And that's the point. I didn't actually say Kamala Persad-Bissessar. In fact, I can show you where I reached out to Khadija Amin. And I said to her, because she, and you know what, that's actually what they all do. Why don't talk to boss? And I said, well, I'm not of the opinion that every single thing needs to be dealt with by boss. Because just like you, I do believe that, you know, she is one person. We have a national executive. You guys can handle it. So I went to the chairman, to the general secretary. In fact, when, you know, I'm going to stop because, of course, you guys know that I resigned as Diego Martin West coordinator over issues. I have emails about those things. I would have gone all the way long before I reached the Kamala Persad-Bissessar, long before.
But Marsha, here's the thing, and he's in a way
But
agreeing.
he just said he said it about Kamala has developed a party loyal to her.
No.
Those were your words this morning. Kamala has developed a party loyal to her.
But
not loyal to UNC?
But no, hold on. What he just said, he said that she can't do everything. All right, that's what he's saying, right? And that's true.
That's true.
That's true.
Agreed.
So that is why Mr. Parry, Mr. Nita, Mr. Charles, Mr. Rai would have said, let us have the national NATEX as June. But when you go out to bully and tarnish persons, calling them PNM, calling them traitors, calling them all of these Nimakaram. He himself, I think, if I'm not mistaken, used it in the article. And I'm subject to be corrected. If you didn't, I apologize. And so MP Rambali stayed silent and he said, enough is enough.
Yeah.
Enough is enough.
Ravi, do you consider yourself a traitor to Trinidad and Tobago when you oppose the government? When you ask the government to be accountable to the people that they have been elected to serve, do you consider yourself a traitor to Trinidad and Tobago? It's a yes or no. No, you don't. Exactly. So calling the leadership of the party is no different. It's no different.
Let's give Mr. Balgobin.
When I raise these matters before the court, I am asking the court a judicial review of certain things that are taking place, of what the government is doing. And that is how the state is set up, right? Where you have the judiciary in place to hold the government accountable. I simply ask questions of the court. I don't go out and say, I think this is how things should happen, and then ask the government to make these things happen. I go to the court, and the court only once, if they agree with me, will mandate the government to...
Would you go to the court on behalf of... Would you go to court on behalf of the UNC membership who we're asking, call elections when elections are due? Would you go to court? Because I have listed 43 elections, internal elections, that were due, that are overdue, and we've heard nothing about it. Because conveniently, so Kriss would have spoken about the process, but conveniently, everyone jumps out and say, well, you know, we jumped the gun because elections due in June, and da-da-da-da-da-da, even though the process. But again, nobody seems, and I'm waiting on the media to really jam them for an answer. I have listed 41, 40, 43 internal elections that have not been called when they are due. If you are not a hypocrite, then I challenge you to mount a legal challenge. Mount a legal challenge. The same way that you would do it for the government. Mount a legal challenge.
An excellent point. Because Dinesh Rambali is an attorney. If you had these issues before, and you understand that the Constitution is...
Why are you throwing it on Dinesh?
And you have an attorney on your team that can go and mount a challenge in the court on your behalf, why hasn't he done it?
Well, he's busy doing the people's business of Shagona's West. You are a political activist. You are someone who is always before the court doing something like this. So why not do it?
If he thinks that the Constitution of the UNC is breached, that is a legal issue.
I am asking you, though. We have you in front.
No, I don't have an issue with it.
You do. So are you saying yes or no? You have no issue with the Constitution being breached.
It's very simple.
Ravi, I am trying to ascertain whether your
ladies and gentlemen, I am interjecting here as host and moderator of what I deem as a very healthy debate and discussion this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here so that everybody can have a sip of water. We'll be right back as we continue the debate. It's healthy conversation, folks, and I'm glad that we are able to provide a platform for such. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much for being with us this morning. We're going to continue the conversation now. I have Kriss, Hosein, Marsha Walker, and Ravi Balgobin Maharaj joining us on the program this morning. Mr. Balgobin Maharaj, coming back to you. Early on in the conversation, you did mention that 2025 we'll see the United National Congress claiming victory in the general elections. But points raised this morning by Kriss Hosein and by Marsha Walker, and by your comments in 2017, I'm curious to know whether or not you believe in its current form and current structure, and even in terms of history of elections within the last 10 years, whether or not you truly believe that the United National Congress at this point in time is capable of mounting a challenge to the People's National Movement or any other political party given its current infighting.
Well, absolutely. And I'll tell you, the history of the UNT and the history of opposition politics involves infighting. That is how mandates are either maintained or changed, given the views of the population at the time. And, you know, I mean, as long as it remains healthy, I think it's healthy for politics. I think it's healthy for the nation to grow. My views in 2017 was based on, again, you know, we had just seen Mr. Basil Pandey, the founder of the UNC, removed as political leader in 2010. Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar came in and immediately got into government. And then when she lost that election in 2015, there was some questions among the membership of the party of whether that means she should step down as leader as well, you know, whether that was the way that the party would operate from then on. And I think what we've seen is that because, again, and it's because she's fostered trust and confidence in the membership, you know, that even though she did not win the general election in 2015, the membership of the party still remained confident enough in her to re-elect as political leader and to have that hope and belief that one day she will return to government. And my views have shifted because of that renewed mandate from the membership. And it's for that reason. And again, you know, she has done something that is extremely rare in Trinidad and Tobago politics, where she has been able, again, to capture votes, to capture seats while in opposition. It's not something we've really seen done since 1962. When you look back at election results going back to 1962, it is very rare that you see an opposition party capture extra seats in a general election rather than lose seats. And so, like I said, it's something extraordinary. And I think that she can turn that momentum that she's been gaining since 2015 into an actual general election victory in 2025. Because not only does she have that momentum, but consistently as well, people have been losing faith and losing confidence in Keith Rowley and the PNM. So I think both of those things will culminate in a UNC victory in 2025.
Kriss, your thoughts?
Losing faith in...
Oh my, that's the same line I want to reply to.
Losing faith in the PNM is nothing new. That didn't start today. As a matter of fact, the country has been losing faith in the PNM for many years now. I would even go back to 2018, 2019, 2017. This is nothing new. As you know, imagine the PNM closed down Petrotrin, faced a general election, and still won.
But what data? Why is he saying that people are losing faith in PNM and Dr. Rowley, though?
The other thing is...
what's the data?
The marginal constituency of Maruga Tableland. One of the areas in which you test constituencies is your local government. You see what the PDs are looking like, how much you won, how much you lost by. And so for it to come so close in Indian Walk Lengua, that gives the UNC that additional push they need in that marginal constituency is a problem, it's a concern. When you look at point of pay as well, I saw EBC is going to name it Claxton Bay. That too is a concern. So I also looked again, Mr. Balgobin. I want to quote you again because you know you're so quotable this morning. He said, while Kamala did lead the UNC when it entered government in 2010, the delusion that this victory was based solely on her brand, I see he's, you know, shaking his head, is dismissed by easily pointing to the numerous losses she has encountered since. But yet Kamala believes that she is entitled to lead the UNC because she has served her party, even if she can only lose more support on the ground. And I think I know he said this in 2017, but you look at the voter turnout of 30.34%, you compare that to her track record when she was in her prime, and I mean, the figures are,
Well, that's the reason,
miles apart.
That's the reason, Chris, I asked you about what's the data behind the line that the country is losing faith in the PNM. Because on one hand, he started with that Kamla Persad-Bissessar is able to foster trust in the membership. But you're seeing that each internal election, each election for political leadership, she gets less votes.
But he said she rigged it. Well, he alluded to it.
I'm going to allow him to change his mind.
Right?
So I'm going to use the words that he is speaking this morning. He said that Kamla Persad-Bissessar has fostered trust. But then say, well, the people are losing faith in Rowley. So are you using different measuring sticks? Because I'm so confused. What is the data?
Convenience.
Oh, that's the data. Because you have Kamla Persad-Bissessar losing votes. Each internal election, she's losing support. So that data would suggest she's not actually gaining trust. She's losing trust of the membership.
And when you challenge them...
So if you win, so we can, it's either Kamla has faith, then the country have faith in Rowley.
Keaton...
We have to apples and apples.
So Keaton, I sat down here and I listened to Marsha and she challenged Mr. Balgobin.
Which I still have not gotten a response.
No, he did respond, I'll tell you, because I'm witnessing this. I'm listening. It's Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago, 7:23 a.m. prime with Keaton Shaw. Right? She challenged...
Keaton Shaw's been the most silent this morning.
So Marsha would have challenged him and said, well, you're so intrigued and interested in constitutionality and holding elections when they do. Take up this case. And he said, well, Mr. Rambali should do it because he's a lawyer. But Mr. Rambali, in my view, started a process. He mounted a platform, say, don't insult these people. Their right, Natex is due. And then he said, as a matter of fact, you see this kind of behavior? I've been silent for so long. There's only so much you could take.
That's actually a good point. He mounted the platform. Similarly, Kamla's a lawyer. Kamla didn't take Rowley to court for the local government elections. She mounted the platform, and Ravi took them to court. So we've mounted the platform, Ravi. Now it's over to you.
Yes.
Elections must be held when elections are due. We've mounted the platform. We've done what we usually do. We mount the platform. Now you do what you usually do.
Well,
Go to court.
Mr. Balgobin Maharaj, I'll allow you to respond and also give closing remarks one time because we're getting to that finishing line. Your response, sir.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of nonsense that keep track of. But
Words, not nonsense.
in terms of Mr. Rambali, and again, going back to it, you said that, you had these issues that you're trying to raise with the party for so long. You have all the notes, you have all the communication. It is very simple for you as a member, I believe you're still a member of the party,
UNC and proud.
To go to Mr. Rambali, hire him as your lawyer. Maybe he takes the case pro bono, since he has the same views as you as well, and to file a matter.
So why won't you
if you
do
think
it?
it is that he continues, because I don't share your views.
Oh, so you don't?
I don't care.
And that's really what I want to find out. So you don't care that 43 elections have not been held?
You are
Thank
now
you for your
presenting this
answer.
information to me this morning. I don't have the information
But
that
you
you
can write
have.
articles.
If you have
Sorry,
it,
let's give Mr.
take it.
Balgobin Maharaj his opportunity. Go ahead, sir.
If you have the information, and I'm assuming that you've already shared all of this information with Dinesh Rambali, you all can take the matter to court. You can file a case in the morning and say, look, these elections are constitutionally due within the UNC, and we are seeking the court to rule on the matter and to force the executive into holding these elections. That is what you can do if you really care about the UNC and its constitution. If all you want to do is to use this information to make noise on a TV show or on a political platform just so you can build momentum for the internal election, then by all means go ahead doing that as well. Nobody in the UNC has stated to this date, to my mind, and maybe you know, publicly, that an internal election will not be held this year, right? So for you all to come to, and you keep parroting the same points over and over and over, and I think by now people would have realized that really and truly there's no substance behind anything that you're saying, and there's no truth behind anything that you have been saying. Kamala Basabi-Sessa is someone who puts herself out there to the membership time and time again. And you speak about that maybe she's been losing votes. But really and truly, what has been happening is she has been, when you look at the candidates that have contested her for internal elections since 2015, first you had Rudal Munilal and Vasan Bharat in 2015. Then you had Christine Nawalo in 2017 or 2018. You had Dr. Fuad Khan, and then you had Vasan Bharat again. And each time, I think the competition has been getting weaker and weaker. And I think that people have been getting more confident in Kamala Prasad-Bisesa to win those internal elections. That is why you're seeing the results that you're seeing. But again, if anyone in the UNC had if any of them had a reason to doubt her ability to lead, they could have voted for any of those candidates who had contested an internal election prior to this. They could have voted for either Rudal Munilal or Vasan Bharat in 2015. They could have voted for Christine Nawal Hosein. They could have voted for Fuad Khan, and they could have voted for Vasan when he contested on his own. They have not done it, and it's because they remain confident in Kamala Prasad-Bisesa and her team to lead the UNC to victory in 2025. And that is how I will end my contribution here today.
Well, thank you very much, Kriss. I think, Kriss, go ahead and respond.
Look, thank you for having me on. I want to thank both of you all as well for the contributions you all put forward. For Mr. Balgobin Maharaj to conclude his conversation and his points by validating the internal elections when he himself said it would have been that she admitted. That's what he said in 2017, and I repeated it earlier in the interview. So for him to parrot the same point that was, I think, clearly refuted with his own words is interesting, very interesting to me. I mean, look, you know, AM Prime, again, good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. I want to leave you all with one more quote, And this quote comes from Mr. Ravi Balgobin Maharaj from 2017. And so he said, so the decision of the supporters really comes down to how much they are willing to put up with Kamala and her shenanigans if a victory in the internal election means that the UNC will remain in opposition for another 8 years.
Ms. Marsha Walker, thank you for joining us. Your closing remarks.
Ravi, the reason that the voter turnout's less and less and less is because the people, the UNC members, have such confidence that Kamala can hold on to her leadership. They don't even bother to come out. You know, they have no one to vote for. They don't bother because they don't have anybody. I ask Ravi to take those words and replace it with PNM and Trinidad and Tobago. And what do we have? The people of Trinidad and Tobago have faith that Keith Rowley could win. They don't bother to come out because the person that's going up against him is so weak it didn't make a difference. Is that what's going on? Because you're seeing a mirror of it. You're seeing the exact, what's happening in the UNC is happening with PNM and Trinidad. The country on the ground, clearly, we're not happy with the leadership of the country. The people on the ground, UNC, they're not happy with the leadership. But somehow Kamala wins elections, Rowley wins elections. And we keep trying to justify. And you know what's happening? Trinidad's going down a rabbit hole where we can't return. UNC's going down a rabbit hole where we can't return. So we have steps. We have to remove Kamala Prasad-Bisesa because she has proven that she cannot beat Keith Rowley. And Keith Rowley has proven that he cannot lead Trinidad and Tobago. And we need to remove him. So it's simple. We have to remove Kamala to remove Keith. It's that simple. The data that Ravi is speaking about for UNC, we can take it and put it to PNM and Trinidad and Tobago, and it's exactly the same thing that we're facing. And I just want elections to be called when elections are due. Let the membership deal with it.
Lady and gentlemen, Mr. Balgobin Maharaj, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning and for sharing your thoughts and opinions with us. Likewise, Ms. Marsha Walker, thank you so much for making time to be with us. Kriss, it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again.
Deadly stare. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all take away from this healthy conversation this morning that people want the best for TNT. I think Mr. Balgobin Maharaj does want the best. Ms. Marsha Walker wants the best. Kriss, I want the best. But I appreciate the healthy debate and healthy conversation this morning amongst the three. It clearly shows that there are young people who are out there who are willing to express their opinions and thoughts and willing to play an active role in parging a path forward. But that being said, guys, I honestly wish that what I've seen from the three of you all this morning, if we can get those politicians and cabinet to actually debate one another, such as you all have debated this morning, if I can get Kamala Pasabi-Sesson and Keith Rowley, I have invited the opposition leader many a times, but unfortunately without success. So who knows? Maybe may get some success later on. But no, healthy conversation, healthy debates, and you all have set an example, really, as far as I'm concerned, for the true politicians, those who are actually in the Red House, to come and have a conversation as well. So, that being said, have a great day. Thank you so very much.
You too.
All right, Mr. Balgobin Maharaj, take care. All the best to you. Thank you, Ms. Walker, Kriss Hosein, ladies and gentlemen of Tobago. Today is a good day to have a good day. I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.